Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. Little late night video, swag after hours here. I want to do a quick summary video of what I think is the good, the bad, and the surprising. The condensed points from the Reddit AMA that they did today on r/fantasy. Let's get it out of the way first. I think this is pretty unambiguously a good thing. One, it's reaching out to a larger audience, maybe getting them to come and play the game, right? We need that. But two, it also, gives some information to, people that are already playing the game, people that are already involved in the community. They didn't answer every question. I think that's to be expected. I'm not sure why you think they would, if that is something you did think, but I've got some notes at the top here. One, their content for the foreseeable future is going to be PvP focused rather than PvE focused. Quality of life is taking second seat to content. They still want to get quality of life stuff out every patch if they can, but they're not going to take some time and just do quality of life stuff. They're just going to keep working on different content. So what that means is that after the Balrog is released in Chapter 4, The Mines of Moria, I think they're just going to dive straight into doing glyphs and multi-squad PvP. They have lots of stuff planned. They have a lot of stuff, they've thought about a lot of stuff. They've made a big map, a network, a roadmap, whatever you want to call it. Which I think means it makes it easier to surprise us, which is a good thing. It keeps us on our toes, and the game isn't super predictable, which I like. But it also leads to some of the big surprises that we saw today. We'll get to that. Let me just ram through these. When will Elrond be re-released? Two things to keep an eye out for. Before the end of the year, I still think October, and sometime after the re-release of the marquees for Arwen and Elladan. It'll be here before you know it. That's confirmation that we're getting a rerun of the Elladan Marquee. We already got a rerun of the Arwen Marquee. I'm not interpreting this as like two reruns of Arwen, just one, and then, but we are getting Elladan for sure. Good. I really like that. That is unambiguously good to rerun the Marquees. Will glyphs have their own energy type or use guild energy or normal energy? And the answer is normal energy, and there will be opportunities through the supplies. I am not a fan of that. I would prefer to have it as its own sort of energy, and there's still a few different scenarios as to how this could get implemented, okay? So one, and the way I think a lot of people are thinking about it, and I think this is the way it's going to end up happening, is basically you have different sets of glyphs on each of the character nodes, let's say the hard nodes or something like that. And you specifically farm for those glyphs. I think that's how it's going to end up. A more optimistic, let's say, scenario is you essentially get currency from farming all of your regular nodes. And you can then use that currency to buy what type of glyph you want, or like specifically what set you want, right? From some sort of supply store. Those are just a few different ways of implementing it. I think they're going to do the former. I'm not a big fan of that. Hayes with the question here. With the addition of glyphs in the near future, will we be seeing any fully developed mod sorting system on release? And then he asked some quality of life stuff. I want to focus on that first question there. Key piece of our glyphs feature is to make the system as accessible as possible. We aim for the experience design for the system to be top-notch and have done our best to pull in a lot of bells and whistles with that intent. This is coupled with better structure between set bonuses, primary stats, secondary stats, should make the system pretty intuitive for both beginner and advanced players alike. That is what I like to see. I think you all are very, very sick of me talking about this, but anytime you have these pretty in-depth character customization systems, they need to come with a suite of quality of life features to make them accessible and manageable. And it sounds like that is what they're aiming for. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you don't do that, then a good chunk of your player base doesn't want to engage with something. Doesn't want to engage with your newest progression system. That's not good. So I like that they're aiming for that they know that that's a thing that they have to get right, and we'll see how it lands. Here's a good one. This is a big surprise from the AMA. What is the max speed you can get from a full glyph set? We're currently testing with a maximum of 3 speed per secondary stack with a maximum of 5 stacks per glyph. Each character can have 6 glyphs equipped, which maxes out at 90 speed per unit on a perfectly rolled set of glyphs. This is the max, not the norm, but it's subject to change as we continue balancing. 90 speed, so fast. Let's put that into perspective. Let's sort this by speed here. Let's go down to Gruher the Brute. 120. Give him 90 speed. That's 210. Even with his passive that slows him down by 10%, that puts him at one... Let's see. 210 times 0.9. Puts him at 189. That's still faster than the fastest character currently in the game. Here's another example. Again, these are the extremes, but I just kind of want to give you the scope here. Because 90 speed mods are definitely going to be a thing at the top end of competition, especially when it comes to multi-squad PvP. Just in arena, let's say Shard 1, Shard 2, you know people are going to be going for those 90 speed mods. You give 90 speed mod to Orphers, that gives him a bunch of speed. You play him against a Brute who has no speed mods. The Orphers is going to be taking 2 full turns plus get most, you know, like halfway, I didn't calculate it exactly, but a good chunk of the way to a 3rd turn before Brute can go, his first turn. So Orphers will be able to lap the Brute in that way. I'll tell you what, if this of course depends on how they're going to balance the other stats they have on here. I'm a little bit confused about some things. Exactly what all these means. The way he phrases it here makes it seem like speed can't be a primary stat, can only be a secondary stat. My impression from the Tana interview was that they also had a speed primary stat, so I'm a little bit confused there. It's so fast. I mean, if it's 90 speed is max, I'm probably going to just be trying to put speed on everybody. I'm not sure where the decision making comes in here. But, you know, we'll wait until it comes out to give it its fair shake. And we'll see, obviously, any details I can get that they're going to give us, I'm going to be happy to see. Because, to me, I'm not a big fan of 90 speed. So, yeah, that's where that is. When will the soft lock issues in multiple game modes be addressed? Great question. We did a video on this on Saturday. Definitely heard and noted. We acknowledge there's a stability and experience issues like soft locking that we are still cutting through. While some issues are trickier and more complex than others, we'd point to you that if you look patch over patch, we are prioritizing improving stability regularly, and that the game is improving release over release. I think that is generally true. I think that's true. I don't think they have, for instance, like the tutorial bug they had at launch anymore, which was plaguing a lot of players. And I think the number of players and in ways in which these soft locks are disruptive has gotten better. But there's still an issue. What I really like about this and why I'm bringing it up here is that it seems like it's on their radar and that they're actually making a priority on these soft locks. Good news. Currently, the in-game economy is quite difficult. Are there any plans to readjust gold and or XPs? I'm sitting on all the champions I simply cannot level, and for me, a big part of the fun is to try out different teams. Me too. We are continually monitoring the game experience and how the economy impacts that. We are aware gold and character XP are highly restrictive. It basically goes on to say that, you know, especially this is true for people pushing multiple squads. He re-emphasizes that they did a little bit to address gold. I actually kind of agree with that, but character XP is the one that they're, you know, really taking into consideration next. And we discussed this on the latest episode of Boons and Banes with Torm. If you take a look at the Excel Whalinator, you know, tool that they developed, him and Jay Randall, basically the gist is this. Character XP is currently the biggest crunch in the game. It doesn't matter whether you're a free-to-play, it doesn't matter whether you're a whale. That is the biggest character crunch. The reason that's not new news, right? I think we all kind of know that, especially people who are really engaged with the game. We're aware character XP is a big deal. But the reason I'm bringing it up here is because I think in this post, they outline that they've realized, okay, we pushed raids out, and raids encourage you to be developing these 5 different raid squads, maybe more depending on the chapter, right? And it looks like it appears that, you know, the ability to level up multiple squads to engage in this new content is not at the place it needs to be. So it seems like they're taking steps to remedy that on the character XP front. So happy about that they're aware of it. Obviously, I would like to see, you know, what comes of that. Will Balin get the Thorin's company tag? If not, why? And then basically he goes on to say these characters are meant to be a sort of snapshot in time and place. And Lord Balin here is King of Moria. He's part of the Shattered Timeline, right? So he's not really part of Thorin's company at this point in time. He's really, part of Balin's expedition. And so what's interesting is this follow-up paragraph he has here, right? And the example he gives is Frodo. It says current character version is Frodo at the beginning of his journey, which is why he gets the Road to Rivendell tag. Before he becomes the leader of the Fellowship, hence why he doesn't have the Fellowship tag. I think this is a pretty good indication, along with the fact that we see Frodo and Strider in the cutscene for the Mines of Moria, that we are going to see some sort of Frodo Aragorn Fellowship at some point in the future. Are assists and the same as given characters basic attacks? And basically the answer is they should be, just a little bit weaker. The intent for counter and assist attacks is for them to do the same behavior as the basic attack with slightly less damage. If that is the case, if that is true, then there needs to be a very big bug pass on how that works. For instance, anytime you call Ugluk to do a basic attack, he does not put provoke on himself. So there's a number of those types of bugs. For even when Keely calls Feely on his basic, you don't get that heal until you level up his I think it's Feely's, maybe it's Keely's basic. You level up one of them to a certain point. So there needs to be some, I guess, bug work done on that and a big pass on that, because that's currently not really how it works. I think, well, maybe for the most part, but there are some notable exceptions. This is interesting. When can you open up the API access so that arena teams can be tracked on LTR.gg? We are absolutely chatting with LTR.gg folks. Actually, they reached out very early on, and I was a bad friend, bogged down with worldwide launch, and didn't respond as soon as I would have liked. That said, they are consummate professionals and waited patiently. It is in the works. Above this response, they also talked about kind of being able to see people's rosters, like being able to go into a player's profile and seeing their rosters. And it sounds like this is infrastructure that they are working on, and I'm very, very glad to hear that. I think having those advanced web tools and API access makes people who are really into the game have a much better experience. And I think it's helpful, especially if you're trying to develop tools to help people with their rosters and their sort of Lord of the Rings home journey. So I'm glad to hear that they have that line of communication open. Nazgul faction and the Witch King in the future, maybe. Would like to see that. And Mouth of Sauron for the Mordor team, please. I would also like to see Mouth of Sauron. I think that'd be really cool. We are also big fans of shadow characters and realize that most characters to date have been light. Yes, there will be more shadow characters coming before the end of the year. Good. But I think you'll be quite excited about. We certainly are. As for the Nazgul, these are some of the most powerful forces of shadow in Middle-earth. They are kings of old, leaders of massive armies. Given this, we don't want to rush out these characters. They are definitely coming, but we plan to give each Nazgul its due attention as a critical leader in Sauron's army. Keep that in mind. I think that's an interesting tidbit considering what we're about to read next. Can we get a tease on who the next legendary character will be and what squad will be required for unlock? There will be another legendary coming before the end of the year, and as a hint, I'll say it's a character from The Hobbit. What this means, the Witch King is probably not going to be the next legendary. I'm actually pretty certain that the Witch King is not going to be the next legendary. So this is just another reminder that just because something is data mined does not mean it is set in stone. And so I don't think we're getting the Witch King. And if we do get the Witch King, I guess I don't think the Haradrim are going to be the unlock requirements for it. And over the past week or so, I've actually been kind of struggling as to seeing, how does the Witch King fit in? How are they going to fit all this in? It seems too jam-packed. And a lot of people, a number of people in my community actually were saying, it doesn't really make sense to just give out, do 4 Nazgul marquees or whatever. And it looks like they're not doing that. Next legendary is coming from The Hobbit. So that brings a few things to mind. You could have something like Bilbo. You could have something like Thorin, because we've got a big dwarf focus going on right now We already have 3 Thorns company members, right? I'm still kind of inclined to believe that the next legendary is going to be Shadow. And so I think that gives you a few options. Golem is an option. I don't know. Again, that's one that maybe doesn't make the most sense to me because of where do you put him as like team wise? How does Golem shake up the Elrond meta? Not really sure about that. There are a few other good shouts though that people have had. Something like Azog the Defiler. He's more of a mainstay in the movies, but he is mentioned in the Hobbit books. I think that could be interesting. I think one of my favorites sort of theories, pet theories here now moving forward, is that it's going to basically be the Necromancer. And it's basically Sauron in his, let's say, ethereal form. And he's just, not to full power, but he's very, very strong. I think that's pretty interesting option as well. Could also be the Master of Lake Town, but probably not. One other interesting option is Thranduil, and probably mispronouncing that, but he is basically King of Mirkwood, the Sylvan Elves of Mirkwood, and he's Legolas's father. He doesn't really help out the dwarves, so I think there's an interesting thematic tie-in there where if the legendary we got is kind of juxtaposed against the first shattered what if timeline scenario we got with Lord Balin and the elves helping out the dwarves. I'm not sure that's going to be the case. I'm kind of on the Necromancer or Azog the Defiler train at this point. But let me know down in the comments what your pet theory is about who the next legendary could be then. This is honestly the biggest surprise from the entire AMA, I think. Well, maybe the 90 speed, but one of the biggest surprises for me was definitely that Witch King is not even going to be a thing for now. And I think maybe that's respectful of the power of the Nazgul and the Witch King. And so maybe that's a good thing that people will like. But now I just have no idea what to expect coming forward. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.